Greetings, Junior Explorers. I'm Senior Explorer Frodan. Today we're going to take a look at Rogue, which is featuring their Quest Rogue from the new expansion Journey to Un'Goro, which you and I and Yahoo Esports are all going to explore. So today we're going to take a look at Tyler's Caverns Rogue. Tyler's a player from the Netherlands who has done a lot of great tournament runs and also simultaneously held #1 legend at all 3 Western servers at the same time. Very talented player. Highly recommend you check out his stream. He has really innovated the deck to primarily be combo oriented, which I like a lot more than just the all-out aggro version of the Caverns Rogue, which initially came out in the first days of Ladder. So let's take a look at the most important card of the deck, the Caverns Below. Quest, play 4 minions with the same name. Now, it's specifically with that name, and means you can play Swashbuckler and Shadow Step it. You can play Stone Plus Spore and Shadow Step it. As long as you play any card 4 times, you are able to get this quest. The reward is the Crystal Core, and the Crystal Core, what it says is, from now on, your minions are 5/5. So that explains why things like Stone Tusk Boar in the deck. You're like, why is this 1-mana 1/1 charge, which basically does nothing, and a joke of a card is now being played? It's because it becomes a 5/5 charger for 1 mana. You play Stone Tusk Boar, you play Southsea Deckhand, and you Shadow Step one of them, play it for 0. Guess what? For 2 mana, you've done 15 damage in the late stages of the game. So Caverns Below, very powerful quest reward, something that a lot of people underestimated prior to the expansion. A lot of people think that Caverns Below might be one of the strongest decks in the game. I personally think it's up there, maybe not the best, but only time will tell. Let's go ahead and break down the cards that you guys see here. Backstab, a really important card for you to gain tempo. A lot of times, early game decks will try to pressure you out from being able to use the quest in time. So having Backstab is extremely crucial for making sure to disrupt your opponent's board momentum by killing off those Murlocs, killing off those Death Rattles, killing off your opponent's Pirates. Preparation is a card that primarily combos with utilizing spells such as the Mimic Pod and Vanish, not to mention the quest itself. In some really key situations, you might have to prep out a Eviscerate in order to survive or maybe kill your opponent, but that's really rare and far and few between. Shadow Step, one of the most important cards in this deck, as Shadow Step is one of the cards that really helps bounce back and give you the ability to finish your quests. In my opinion, the most important card to bounce back is Novice Engineer. Novice Engineer allows you to not only fulfill the quest for a very cheap cost at just 2, and Shadow Step makes it 0, but also the fact that it draws you a card, giving you more range of play. So if you draw Novice Engineer into some of your chargers like Patches, Stone Tusk Boar, and Southsea Deckhand, and honestly Patches isn't even that bad if you draw it in the hand in the late stage of the game. It really gives you a lot of powerful ways to kill your opponent. Glacial Shard might be my favorite way to get off the Caverns Below because of how annoying it is for your opponent to deal with. You can freeze one of your opponent's minions, Shadow Step it back, and then freeze your opponent's face so that if he has a weapon, he can't attack. Or he's Druid, he can't use his hero power. These small little things might help you get the quest off. And don't be too conservative either. If you freeze 2 minions and there's 1 more left, or if you freeze the entire board but you have an ability to Shadow Step and freeze your opponent's face, and they have a weapon, or you know that they're a weapon class, go for it. The fact that Glacial Shard can come out there and freeze and really stall your opponent out is really important to keep other things alive if you don't have a bounce. I think this card might be one of the most skill testing cards of the entire deck, because you have to make sure to know when you're using it, if you need to save it or you need to go aggressive. The pirate package doesn't need too much explanation. Southsea Deckhand and Swashbucklers are pirates, which summon Patches directly from the deck. A very powerful card. I would actually even say that this is a deck that you don't mind having Patches in your hand. Not necessarily the opening, because it obviously takes away from another draw, but if you end up drawing Patches, say turn 3 or turn 4, it's definitely a lot less detrimental in this deck compared to some other ones. Gadstan Ferryman and Youthful Brewmaster both have the same effect of returning a friendly minion from the battlefield and putting it into your hand. And make sure that whenever you're playing a cheap minion, you have to play the minion and then bounce it back. Don't play it again immediately if you know that you need to save it for a second bounce. A lot of times when you utilize the Gadstan Ferryman and Youthful Brewmaster, you might be tempted to play the minion again right afterwards. But if you are ending your turn and you don't get the quest off, say you've played Swashbuckler twice, you bounce it back with the Ferryman, and then you play the Swashbuckler again, What's gonna happen is that your opponent's gonna kill that Swashbuckler with the force of 1,000 suns, and you're no longer gonna be able to fulfill the quest because you have to wait for either draw the other Swashbuckler or start over because you're only at 3 out of 4. So if you end up using the Gadsden Ferryman, make sure to hold on to that card when you can guarantee get the quest off. Novice Engineer is the ideal card to use for the combos, primarily because it draws deeper into your deck and allows you to get that range to flood the board. The most important thing with the Crystal Core reward is that you need to have things to play. If you invest all of your resources into just finishing the quest, if you have no minions or you have 1 minion, yeah, turn 5, turn 6, you're playing 1/5/5. Big deal. But the whole point is that you're able to flood the board a lot. Novice Engineer gives you that ability and that range to help generate all these big 1/1 tokens into 5/5s. Cold Oracle is a card that helps you draw a lot more, and drawing 2 cards for your opponent might feel bad, but remember, you care more about your quest and your condition and your combos than your opponent. Not to mention you get some really fun scenarios where you Cold Oracle, Shadow Step, Cold Oracle, your opponent's throwing away and discarding so many excess cards because they can't get it out in time, and you're generating all these 5/5s for free essentially because your opponent's not really able to do much against it. There's a lot of really cool scenarios that you can set up with Cold Oracle and really punishing your opponent if they can't answer it immediately. Mimic Pod is another crucial card, very similar to Youthful Brewmaster and Gadsden Ferryman. Just draws you a card, adds you a copy to your hand. Very simple and straightforward, helps you fulfill the quest, nothing too crazy. It would be one of the primary cards you would use for preparation if you feel like you need some cards to fulfill the quest. Lastly, Vanish. This card is probably one of the coolest cards in the entire deck, primarily because it extends your deck into the late game and scales it. If you're able to use Vanish for not only chargers, like you play Southsea Deckhand, Stone Tusk Boar, hit your opponent for 10, prep Vanish, and then play those minions again, that's very possible and frequent combo that you experience on turn 6, 7, or 8 if you're able to fulfill the quest. So Vanish gives a lot of late game potential. Not to mention that in some pinch situations, you might need to draw again. So you play Novice Engineer, Cold Oracle, prep Vanish, and you get all that card back, and then you're trying to draw into more combo damage on your opponent. One of the primary strengths of this deck is that it's so fast sometimes. It has the ability to just finish the quest even by turns 3 or 2. And then you can prep out the quest, and all of a sudden you're just filling board with 5/5s for the rest of the game from turn 4 onwards. So there is that I win hand that it can sometimes have. Another really powerful strength is the combo potential of the deck. I've seen rogues pull out wins from the most unwinnable situations, or at least seemingly unwinnable situations. So don't underestimate what a rogue can do if they have the quest finished and they have a handful of cards that can bounce back and charge you to the face. One of the big weaknesses of this deck is that it can just fizzle. You can just draw dead with Swashbucklers and Novice Engineer. You can have 2 Shadow Steps and a Brewmaster and no ability to finish the quest really, except if you want to Shadow Step the Brewmaster itself. There's sometimes a lot of cases too where you just get a little bit short of the quest. You get 3 of everything, but you just get 4 of nothing. One of the things that also is very scary about the deck is if your opponent plays a Dirty Rat and they pull out one of your key cards, the entire deck just loses on the spot because you're so dependent on that quest that if you lose the ability to finish your quest in a reasonable time, you're stuck playing 1/1s and 2/1s for the rest of the game. So some of the mulligans that are important are the Shadow Steps and the bounces. You have to remember that Shadow Step by itself is weak, but if you have Shadow Step and say Swashbuckler, that's very good. If you have Novice Engineer and Shadow Step, that's an insta keep in my opinion, because it helps you get that card draw going. And the more you draw into your deck with Novice Engineer, the likelier you are to pick up Youthful Brewmaster and the Gadsden Ferryman. So an ideal hand in my opinion, if you're going on the coin because you get an extra card, would be the Caverns Below, followed by Shadow Step, Swashbuckler, and Youthful Brewmaster, or the Gadsden Ferryman. Having a Novice Engineer there is really good too. I wouldn't be opposed to keeping it, but these are all really good candidates. Southsea Deckhand could be okay as a keep if Your opponent is playing an aggressive deck, and you need to get out patches early and just stabilize. Pirate Warrior, for example, tends to really overrun this kind of deck because you're so busy setting up the quest and your opponent's playing really powerful minions. If they get a single Frodan Berserker on the board and you don't have Eviscerate, you can't really answer it easily, and they're just going to destroy you by the time the quest activates. Some important synergies to remember are the way Vanish works with every single card. Think very creatively about how you can bounce everything back and get 2 times the value. Even cards like Glacial Shard, freezing minions and your opponent from attacking with weapons or their hero power is very crucial. Don't ever forget the fact that Swashbuckler has the ability to bail you out by adding a random class card to your hand. People look at Pavel, the world champion from 2016. Being able to put his faith into a single random card might be your way to bail yourself out of a situation, but don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work out. Colette Oracle is also a really good card to Shadow Step in late game scenarios, but I would highly recommend against it in the early game because it gives your opponent the removal tools. Not to mention, if they're playing a deck with Dirty Rat, gives them the ability to draw it and play it and ruin your combo. Rogue has been a deck that never really is too expensive. This is definitely a little bit on the more expensive side at 6,500 dust. You can make it cheaper by actually cutting patches, in my opinion. Patches is pretty important, but in the end, it's still fundamentally just a 1/1 charger. And we've seen people throw in random tech cards, such as, bear with me, and this is not a prank. Shield Bearer is a card that actually has a little relevance because not only is it a very cheap minion that can become a 5/5 taunt, but also the fact that it can keep other minions alive if you need a turn to bounce it back. So say you play, Novice Engineer and you play Shield Bearer on turn 3, and then that gives you the ability to protect your Novice Engineer so you can bounce it back the following turn and then be able to play it on turn 4, hopefully drawing to Shadow Step. So I've seen some people think about this idea of Shield Bearer being thrown in, most notably Zalay from Luminosity Gaming. Another card that you can try to tech in if you don't have the ability to afford patches is Voodoo Doctor, because it helps you keep alive from the aggressive strategies. And these sound really stupid. Why would I ever play some of these trash tier cards? That's what the power of the Caverns Below quest is. It's able to make some of these irrelevant cards extremely powerful in some situations. Maybe even using Voodoo Doctor when you've already activated the request reward to heal a minion back to a 5/5 so your opponent can't AoE it down. Hey Junior Explorers, hope you guys enjoyed that video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out some of the other content. We've got lots of other Hearthstone stuff going on here on the Yahoo channel. Maybe it'll even help you survive.